the next, you're thinking different thoughts, you're having different emotions, different experiences in your mind. So if it keeps changing, then it can't be you. From one moment to another, you're like different. It's like you keep shifting. So you are looking for the truth of your being, which is the same always, no matter what happens to the mind, body, or emotions. So in this gathering, we are searching for the truth. Which is what some people call it the Tao, the great mystery.
The soul.
The soul. That which cannot be tasted, seen, heard, touched. You can't understand it. It is beyond any scientific discovery. So we're going to explore the great beyond. Very few people are trying to discover this. And why? Because it seems impossible. Seems like our mind is so powerful that it overcomes everything. So all day long, we're just in our mind, and that's all we experience. And that's suffering, because the mind one day is going to be happy, the next it's sad, the next day it's happy, the next it's sad. It's like waves. It keeps shifting. It's never consistent. So when we get caught in such a strong mind, it's very difficult to dive into truth, because all there is our mind. In this gathering, we're invoking an energy that helps to quiet and still the mind, so that the dawning of truth can occur within us. Some people call that enlightenment. Some people call that born again. You've heard of that idea, born again? It means your ego dies and your soul arises out of the silence. That's the soul. And the soul, the perfume of the soul, is bliss. And bliss is pure, ecstatic happiness. And it can be constant, flowing through you. So powerful that you never have a problem ever again. Because you're overwhelmed in this blissful state of consciousness, which comes from the soul. So, as I said, not an easy path for most people to take, because most people are not interested in sort of quieting their mind. They find it too difficult. If you sit for 2 minutes and try to tell your mind to be quiet, likely it's not going to be quiet. That's why most people give up meditation very quickly, because it becomes frustrating. So when you come here, you are given tools, and these tools are designed to invoke an energy that's already inside you. I'm talking about like an awakening of an energy inside you that naturally will quiet your mind and awaken the bliss. So you can take the tools that we work with today and use them at home for yourself. Certainly everyone can go and, get a meditation app and listen to some ocean waves or something, and that might be useful to some degree because it kind of relaxes and calms your mind. But here, there's a presence that's being invoked that is almost like palpable, isn't it? I mean, you were saying something like it's a drug, but better than drugs, right? Yeah. And it's palpable. It's like, it feels full and big and just sometimes thick and powerful. And so many different words. I mean, it's so hard to even point to. But if sometime during this gathering you feel that, if you want to magnify it and keep growing it and empowering it, simply put your attention more on it, on the shift inside you. Wherever you feel it, you might feel it here, you might feel it here, you might feel it here. Depends on, everyone has sort of their own experience. But just by focusing on it, it becomes bigger, larger, more significant, and it can take you into the depths of your being till ultimately you discover your own truth.
So you're just focusing on the shift?
The shift.
Just the shift.
You've got it. The shift. That is the key. And I wish I could tell you what that means.
But I don't shift up and down.
No, you're not like shifting like this. I'm talking about an inner shift where suddenly your mind goes into another dimension. And you're like, what just happened here? Like my sense of reality literally changed. It's almost like I'm having a hallucination. It's an inner
So there's no bad shifting?
Within the context of this, no. I mean, imagine if you're out on the road and suddenly you got stressed out and you were feeling like this. That would be considered a shift, but in a heavier, more negative way. And if you put attention on that, then that will start to increase and you'll start to get more and more worried. That's going the opposite way. Here, we're trying to, we're tuning into a shift that's kind of more of an expansive, blissful state. So certainly shifts can go either way depending on what kind of environment you're in and what you choose to put your mind on, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
If we're yearning for the shift and we just can't seem to feel anything,
yes.
Nothing changes, what do we do in that case?
What a great question. So what you do, there's two things so just to answer the question for people, or to say the question for people online. She said, if you really want to experience a shift, but you're not able to for some reason, like it's possible, but you're not able to, what do you do to make it more possible? What do you do to encourage it to have that change or experience? And I often have wondered that as well. So one way is to have what I call prayer or an intention. Right? So if you're doing a practice, and you say, okay, in your mind as you're doing the practice, you say, please, universe, or whatever your name is for, whatever is your higher power, God, whatever. I want to feel this energy in a more profound way, in a very conscious, profound way. You have that intense sort of prayer. And then you just let it go. Let the universe take care of it. That intention and prayer will start to heighten your experience of whatever spiritual practice that you do, right? And I'll mention one more thing, because I want to tell you what happened to me and why I was launched into a state initially when I first started my meditation path. I went to a spiritual retreat back in 2007 in Austin, Texas. And we were doing a breath session, deep, deep breathing. And we did it for like an hour and 15 minutes straight. Can you imagine? I mean, like deep breathing for like hour and 15 minutes. We'd have breaks in between. We'd maybe do it for like 15 minutes. And we'd stop, we'd relax, and then we'd do it again for another 15 minutes. I mean, tough breathing, like not easy. Well, 45 minutes in, suddenly, something clicked in my mind. And it was like this fire turned on, like a switch. And my mind entered into a different dimension. That's what I call the shift. And since then, it hasn't turned off. And it was a meditative flow, like a buoyancy, where it's pushing this energy up, and I automatically go into sort of spontaneous meditations. Right? And it doesn't turn off. It just keeps going. It's always in the background. The fire's always going. So that breathing is something that you can do to break through if you're feeling stuck. So let's say you want to do a practice that we do tonight when you're at home. Before you get into the practice, do a deep breathing thing, and that will help to clear some of your blocks. And then when you do the practice, it'll be much easier, much more powerful for you. So that's another answer to your question. Yeah. breath is surprisingly powerful. It's the way that we control it. The breath is the bridge to controlling the mind. If you can control your breath, you can start to control your mind. Because normally our mind just does what it wants to do. It's like a monkey. You can't control it. It's going to do what it wants to do. You can tell it to be quiet, but generally the mind's not going to obey you. So what do you do when you're helpless against your mind? It takes over, right? The truth dawns when the mind becomes silent and quiet. And then you become a yogi, a true yogi. The final stage of yoga, people do yoga classes all the time. They do movement and stretches and things like that. But all the stretches and movements are designed then to take you into a meditative state at the end to still your mind. So the ultimate goal of yoga is not to just have a nice exercise and sweat some and get stretched out for your body. It's to prepare you for the ultimate meditation so you can experience your own truth. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. People forget. I mean, maybe they're never even introduced to the concept of yoga. You know, yoga, people think, oh, I gotta sweat. You know, some people go to, what do you call it? You know,
Hot yoga.
hot yoga, right? Yeah, there's the Bikram yoga, things like that, where they go to 105 degrees and they sweat their butt off. You know, they go, oh, well, I had a good workout. Well, how's your meditation? Is your mind quiet? Because if your mind's not quiet, then you had a nice exercise, but you weren't going after the real true purpose of yoga. Every being on this planet will ultimately come to the path of yoga. They will ultimately follow this path because it is what you might call the final stage or the evolutionary process of humanity. Humanity can advance technologically all at once, you know, Facebook, social media, 5G, you know, internet and IT, you know, artificial intelligence and all that. That's fine technologically, but the true evolution is inside your own being. That is evolution. Because what happens is when your mind becomes quiet, then the universe fills you and awakens you to extraordinary potential, extraordinary powers that are so far beyond normal human. I mean, you've probably read Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. If you haven't, this is a good book to start out with. Amazing. Have you read it?
No, I read Force versus Power.
Power versus Force.
And it was a good book.
Good.
Sometimes
Perfect.
a little hard to understand though.
Yeah.
It was a little complicated.
Yeah.
It was still good.
Good start. Next book.
Thank you.
Next book, Autobiography of a Yogi.
No problem.
Next one. Really, because what will happen is, as you read the experience of these yogis who go into these meditations, you'll wonder, like, how do they gain these superpowers, like superhuman powers, invincible to cold and heat, being able to levitate, being able to read people's minds, being able to not eat, not having to eat or drink, you know, like extraordinary things that normal humans are not able to do. But because when the mind becomes quiet, the energy of the universe can now fill you and work through you. If your mind is going all the time, there's no space for the power of the universe to flow through you. You're disconnected from this endless energy source that's everywhere. It's like the sun is shining all the time, and yet we get tired. Doesn't make any sense, does it? There's endless energy in the universe, and yet we get tired after 16 hours of work. We want to go to sleep for 8 hours. It doesn't make any sense. A yogi who's truly in a meditative state, they don't have to sleep. They don't have to eat. They're like they energize their body. They keep going. Because I'm going to give you kind of one more example of why. When you go to sleep at night into deep sleep, do you know how rejuvenating that is?
Mm-hmm.
When you wake up, right? If you've anyone's experienced deep sleep,
Yeah.
right? Like once in a while, people and when you wake up, you feel so, like rejuvenated, and you can go through